Hey guys, the character Moldir recently released in China. We already talked about her a little bit here and there when it comes to team building and pull plans, but now let's take a deep look into her actual kit. Starting off by looking at her inside, which is already a key part and very important when it comes to wanting to play Moldir to her maximum efficiency. So whenever allied characters consume Moxie, Moldir gains a stack of combat readiness for 3 rounds. Combat readiness is a buff that needs to be stacked up in order to grant Moldir the effects that she excels at. That is what will make Moldir important and a very good slot in many teams. So let's go over it. If there are at least 10 stacks of combat readiness, you gain immunity to having your Moxie removed from yourself. That is, for right now, with all the content that we have, not something that is very impressive, but it's pretty likely that this will come in clutch in later content, right? This will not stay as useless as it is right now. That is pretty certain. Then, if there are at least 20 stacks of combat readiness, all allied characters have their ultimate might increased by 2% per stack of combat readiness. That is a key part. That is how you apply ultimate might, a whole bunch of it, to your entire team, simply by stacking up this combat readiness to 20 stacks at least. But then, if there are at least 30 stacks of combat readiness, all allies gain critical hit rate, yes, plus 30%. If this critical hit rate would now exceed 100%, then the excess critical rate is not wasted but converted to critical damage instead. Okay, so it is very important to stack up on these combat readiness stacks to increase your team's ultimate might and crit rate. Cool. Her Insight 3 says when entering battle you start a battle off with 10 stacks of combat readiness for 2 rounds, and you gain +1 Moxie after you counter-attacked. And that leads us to the most important part when it comes to her her kit, her incantations, right? And that is incantation number 1, called Heal the Future. That is a counter incantation, and when you use it, you gain 2 stacks of combat readiness. And if you would now have at least 10 stacks of combat readiness applied to yourself, then whenever an ally would be attacked, Moldir counter attacks by using her ultimate. That is completely ridiculous. Again, when you use this counter incantations, you gain 2 stacks of combat readiness. If you have 10 stacks of combat readiness, you counter attack by using your ultimate whenever any ally is attacked. It doesn't even have to be Moldir that is attacked. It can be any ally, and then she just uses her ultimate for free. Yikes, okay? Then, let's say you wouldn't have 10 stacks of combat readiness applied to yourself when you use this counter incantation and one of your allies gets attacked. If you don't have 10 stacks of combat readiness, then Moldir counter attacks by using her incantation number 2 instead of her ultimate. Most of the times though, as a side note, you will have 10 stacks of combat readiness. Like pretty much always. There will be a very low amount of time where you don't have these 10 stacks. And yeah, you use your incantation number 2 when you don't have 10 stacks. And if you have 10 stacks, you use your ultimate, okay? That is, I just want to put emphasis on that because that is ridiculously crazy. Then let's take a look at her incantation number 2, right? Because we don't even have to actively use this, because we use it as a counter attack sometimes, keep that in mind. It is called Destroy the Past. It's a debuff incantation. It deals a little bit of damage. And first of all, it applies Passion Drain. That is a debuff. You apply this to one of your opponents, and now if any of your allies attacks this enemy with Passion Drain on them, they gain +1 Moxie, right? Perfect. You already know this mechanic from Melania. Then you gain AP +1 as well for one round. AP +1 as well as Passion Drain and a little bit of damage, and you cast this passively sometimes. Okay, absolutely ridiculous already, right? Use your ultimate passively. You use your incantation too passively. You apply ultimate might. You are immune to Moxie reduction, and you give your entire team critical hit rate. Whew. Like, take a breather, let all of this sink in, and just realize what all of this means. Alright, now let's take a look at her ultimate, which is called No Longer Lost. Man, I wish I would also be no longer lost. But anyways, it is a mass attack. It deals 400% reality damage to all enemies, and it grants all allies 6 stacks of ceremonious critical damage. That means you increase your ultimate critical damage plus 3% for each stack. If this is cast actively though, without you using incantation 1 as a counter, then you would deal an additional 300% reality damage. If this is cast through the counter, then for every 4 stacks of combat readiness, you grant all allies additional stacks of ceremonious critical damage. And you gain Dogma for 2 rounds. Dogma increases your ultimate might plus 20%, but you cannot be immune to Moxie reduction. So it is not 100% necessary to do this, but to min-max your effectiveness a little bit, you should make sure that whenever you cast this ultimate here actively, then you should make sure that you are at 10 stacks of combat readiness, so you are immune to Moxie reduction. Before you cast this ultimate actively, make sure you are at 10 stacks of combat readiness. That is not 100% necessary, right? You don't always have to do this or else it's not good or something. No. That is just a little bit of mid-maxing here going on. And that's it. So it is actually not too complicated, but let me just say one thing right here already. This character is through the roof completely busted. This is, no matter how you possibly would look at it, a must pull character. Like, you cannot skip Moldir. It would be a huge mistake to skip this. This is ridiculous, okay? So, before I talk a little bit more about team building when it comes to Moldir, because yeah, I want to put emphasis on some things here. But let's first of all take a look at her portraits and then talk about team building. So, Destroy the Past. That is her incantation number 2, which inflicts Passion Drain and AP +1 for 1 round. This incantation number 2 with her portrait 1 would now deal a little bit more damage, and you gain AP +1, not for 1 round but for 2 rounds. That is the exact same portrait number 1 that Flutterpage has, and these portraits are of course ridiculously good, but this portrait 1 is not as recommended as it would be for a character like Flutterpage, because with Flutterpage you will have to use her incantation that applies AP +1 actively always. Moldir is a little bit different here, because you apply this AP +1 passively, at least sometimes, you know. So this portrait compared to Flutter Page's portrait loses a little bit of value, but still make no mistake, this is a fantastic portrait one, really, really good. But it is not through the roof value, and you don't necessarily need that, you know. I would advise you to not pull for portraits for Moldir, but instead pull portraits for other characters, like for example Recoleta right now, or the Nautica in version 2.8 and stuff. But still, this is a very, very good portrait number 1, still, make no mistake. Then her portrait number 2 increases her insight by the ultimate damage dealt increased from combat deployment, that would be 2% per stack, is now 2.5%. And arms repair, which is critical hit rate plus 30% for your entire team, and excess critical hit rate converts to critical damage. And that is now no longer 30%, but 40%. This is really, really good, especially because of the fact that excess critical hit rate converts to critical damage, and having this increased by 10% makes it more likely. It increases the damage by a significant amount, but it is not as well as portrait number 1. It is very, very good, but nothing insanely crazy. Then her portrait number 3. This is where things get a little bit more crazy, but also like not recommended. Moxie gained by counter attacking is now 2 instead of 1. That is of course, like needless to say, ridiculous, right? You cast your ultimate actively more and more times. But then again, it's the same stuff as for her portrait number 1, as you cast your ultimate passively already, and you need 10 stacks of combat readiness and stuff. But her ultimate is better when cast actively, so there are a lot of good arguments to be made to obtain her portrait number 3. But yeah, again, like keep in mind, I personally would not recommend this, and I would advise you to rather pull for portraits for other characters than for Moldir, even if her portraits are pretty good, right? Still. Anyways, let's keep going. No longer lost. Her ultimate reality damage is increased to 500% instead of 400, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So ultimate damage is increased by a further 100%, pretty good, and now grants 8 stacks of ceremonious critical damage. Let's check how many stacks it was before. It is 6 stacks, and now it's 8. Yeah, like I keep not being too impressed, but it is very, very good nonetheless. And portrait number 5 is if you actively cast your ultimate, then the additional reality damage dealt is increased to 600, and Dogma now increases ultimate by 30%. How much did Dogma increase before? By 20%. Yeah, see, it is like everything here is not too crazy. If you like really, if you are in this position of, oh, I love Moldir, this is pretty likely to become my favorite character, and I want to go deep and I want to make her as strong as possible, then I would go for portrait 3 at maximum, right? But yeah, pull for other portraits such as Recoleta or Nautica and stuff, and not for Moldir. But yeah, again, her portraits are really, really good. It's not like the portraits are bad or something like that. No, they are really, really good. I just personally wouldn't deem it worth it. Okay, now let's talk about team building, because there are quite a lot of things to break down here. In the past, I told people and I said that Melania does not have as much value as people think she would have. And she's not that crazy good character, right? She is insane, don't get me wrong, but still a little bit overrated. And the reason why I said that is that she will be replaced in version 2.8 by Moldir. Moldir is just a better version of Melania. And I got quite a huge amount of backlash for this. As people always told me, Straw Hat, are you serious? Like, Melania will be played together with Moldir, and she will replace Pickles and not Melania, right? They benefit a lot from them being played together and blah blah blah. Yeah, there is truth in that, right? It is not nonsense or something. You can argue this is actually true, because for each Moxie that an ally consumes, Moldir gains stacks of combat readiness, which she needs, right? We figured that out. And Melania gives that Moxie. She accelerates this Moxie and spreads Moxie throughout her entire team, so that would be very, very beneficial. But that's about it. Melania does not profit characters more than Moldir would. And Melania also does not give Moldir necessarily anything she would need, right? Moldir is truly a better version of Melania. It is true. 100%. She has a better ultimate. She also has Passion Drain. She applies this Passion Drain passively without using up AP. She uses her ultimate for free, better than Melania does. She is not dependent on Recoletta's precast incantation, and so on and so forth. But again, yeah, Melania is still good because of the Moxie acceleration that she gets from her Euphoria update. So it is still good, but the huge problem that occurs is that Melania and Recoletta in their team, they both use up all the AP, and these two want to be paired with characters that play themselves. And yeah, Moldir plays herself, but only to a certain extent. You still have to spam this incantation number 1, Heal the Future, every single time. When this is in your hand, you use it every single time. It is very, very important, even if the counter is still active, because you still need to use this, because this is the way that you generate your combat readiness stacks, which you so desperately need. And these combat readiness stacks, they run out. You can see this, they last for a certain amount of rounds, so you would have to generate them over and over and over again. So the way you do this is with her incantation number 1, and you will use this incantation number 1 with Moldir over and over and over again, and only then does she play herself. Why is this a problem? Because she uses up AP with this incantation, and that is not something that a Recoletta Melania team ever wants, you know? So there's more though, because Moldir applies a whole bunch of ultimate might and crit damage to her team, and that's why she is very, very slottable. With Lucy and Ulrich releasing, you can play Moldir in a team with Lucy, Ulrich, Ezra. Why is that? Because Ulrich is also all about ultimate might. He generates ultimate might for his team, and he profits a whole lot from ultimate might. The key factor is why Moldir and Ulrich together would apply such a ridiculously high amount of ultimate might to Lucy is because Lucy's Euphoria makes it so that she profits from ultimate might when she uses her incantations. That would make Lucy's damage go through the roof, right? And you can play Recoletta together with Melania and then slot Moldir into the team with Lucy and Ulrich, because Lucy, Ulrich and Ezra, they already will take care of the dynamo generation so that the electric field is fueled fast enough, and Moldir is there to provide the ultimate might for this team. But yeah, anyway, so would I really recommend playing Recoleta, Melania and Moldir all together? No, I wouldn't. I prefer in this team Pickles over Moldir because Pickles is more AP friendly. That's the big reason why. And then Moldir is free to be played in the Dynamo team. That is what I would personally recommend. But I mean, you do you. And that's all about I wanted to say when it comes to Moldir. I hope that was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and we love this game.